This is CS Flex 2550, the database class, and today I'm going to take you through pulling data out of a single table select statement. So what we're going to start with is we're going to install Workbench together. We'll show you how to navigate the database using SQL statements, and then we're going to go over the select statement. And the select statement is all about getting information out of the table. Okay, so to install, I hope you saw the links on there on the website. You can just click on them. If you're one of those people that actually like to type things in, here it is. That's the URL to download MySQL Workbench. Now the nice thing is it's two pieces of software, but you only have one download. This MySQL Workbench will install everything.
Before we start learning MySQL, you will have to download some software. So either click on the link in Canvas, or you can alternatively just Google MySQL Workbench download. And it's this second one right here. It might not be there, but it's the dev one. Now you'll want to do this all-in-one package. That way it gets both SQL and the Workbench at the same time. And go ahead and hit download. And it will take you to this page where you can either log in or sign up. In our case, we don't care. We're just going to click on this, no thanks, I just start my download link. I've actually already done this part. So go ahead and run the program. And you're going to go ahead and say yes or okay to all of the messages it gets you through, all the way until, let's see if I can find one point and stop sharing this at the same time. Is there a pause on this so you don't have to sit through this whole thing? There it is. Okay, it's kind of run its little course, and it's going to take you to this window right here. This is what we want. Now, if you want, you can go ahead and click on the default. There's a lot of stuff we're not going to be using in this, so if you want to save yourself some space, do a custom install. And this page we're going to download and use MySQL Server. So I'm just going to expand that. And these are all the different installations you can use. I'm just going to use the most recent, whichever it is. And we will also need Workbench. So I'm going to go back up, close the little plus signs, and come to Application and choose Workbench. And once again, I'm just going to choose the very first one. Hit Next. It's going to have you install these individually before you hit Next. So go ahead and hit this Execute button. And I'm going to see if I could pause this so you don't have to wait for it to go through this. Okay, so I got it to this point, and I got a window that popped up that says we have to install. This uses C++ to, so we do have to have a most recent version of the C++ package. So when that comes up, just go ahead and say yes and install that. I'm going to pause again so you don't have to sit through this. Okay, now it's made it through its little install thing, and it takes me back to this. I can go ahead and hit Next and go through and finish up this installation. Okay, it's finished its little installation, and now from here on out, we'll just configure it. I'm just going to keep the default on this section, and it's going to ask you to create a password. Gives you tips for secure passwords. In this case, it's only going to be local on your own computer. So more than anything, choose something that you're going to remember. Mine is not going to be strong in this case. Normally I use strong passwords, but so there we go. So I've got my password in, and you do have to remember this because anytime you're going to open or use this program, you're going to have to enter in that password. So let's go through and next. Don't forget that password, please. And from here on out, it's pretty basic. You're just going to say yes or next throughout the entire program till you get to it. So go ahead and finish installing this and catch us in a few, and we'll start using this particular program. Yay, it said finished.
When you first open up MySQL Workbench, it will look something like this. You'll have a default connection over here, and pretty much that's what you're dealing with. Hopefully you've set up a password when you installed my school workbench on your computer. I probably should have mentioned that in the previous video, that it's going to ask you to do a password. If you want, you're welcome to use this connection. If you ever wanted to use different connections, you can just create them here, where here with the plus sign. There we go. You could just create a name. So maybe I'll call this CS2550. And I'm just going to leave all the defaults and say OK. And now I have my own connection. If at any point you don't want your connections, just click on the gear next to it. And then here we could say, oh, I don't want that connection. I'm going to delete that. I'd probably leave the default connection there because, that's kind of the one I'm going to use anyways this time. Or should we just do our own? Either way, doesn't matter. So I'm going to click on this. It's going to ask me for my password, or maybe it's not in this case. Maybe it already did. I can't remember now. So here we are. And there's no data in this database yet. It's pretty much empty. There's no tables. There's not even, there's a couple of databases created. There's some default ones in there. No, we're not going to use those. We're just going to leave those alone. But just so you can see what they are, this area right here allows you to type your SQL statements. And then this lets you execute it. If you ever wanted to save your SQLs, you could just by hitting the save button. Down here is any error messages or any errors that might happen. Some of these other windows you can close out. We're not going to be using them all that much. I think there's like a little button over here that lets you minimize some of the windows as needed. I keep this bottom one because we want to know if there's errors or not. All right, so if we want to see what the databases are, we can say show databases. And I'm going to put a semicolon right there and hit execute. So that command brings up the databases that exist. Now I've already got a couple of databases in here. Yours might not look exactly like this, like I've already got this data in. I've got a couple other ones that you might not have. Some of this you might have because information schema, that's the name of a database that's default, comes with this. All right, so show databases shows what databases you have. Now, if you want to choose a database, you can, but there's nothing that we need in. We don't have the default schema in. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up that file that you just hopefully downloaded. Let me show you where that is. Here's our page where you're watching this video, which like it says 0 seconds right now. So that's kind of weird because I'm recording it. Anyway, sorry. So here's that database file I want you to download. It's an SQL file. You can actually open it with Notepad or Notepad++ if you wanted. And once you have that downloaded, oh, come on. It's going to go to that window and then just hit the download button here. Don't try and copy and paste it because it messes up formatting. Okay, that's now downloaded. So instead of doing this, I'm going to go File, and I am going to load a script. Come on, open this SQL script. And that's in my downloads directory. There it is. So here is the script. And what this does is it creates a bunch of tables and it loads the tables with some data that we can use to practice on. Okay, so we have this script uploaded. Now I'm just going to hit execute. And it's going to execute like a gazillion commands because this is pretty long, but it's going to load all the data into our database. Okay, so now I have two scripts open. I have the default script open and I have the database script open. Now check this carefully. They should all be green check marks. If you get any weird red ones in there, just send us a message or send your instructor a message and we'll get back and see why it's doing that. Okay, so I no longer need this anymore, and it's always going to be in your database. You don't have to load this every time, just this time. Okay, so now that our database is loaded, if you were to go back and say show databases, DATA BASES, semicolon, I'm going to run this, you will now have this student 255 database. I had it before, you didn't have it before, but now you should have that. So what we want to do is we want to use